The Lover's Frequency. This is a Gothic horror about two people bound together by love, grief, invention, and the terrible possibility that death can be tuned like a signal. Hello folks, and welcome back to Bernette's Bizarre But True Tales. My name is Earl. I am a subscriber to this show, and you too can narrate a story if you're interested. Just drop your interest in the comments below. Now on with the show. Today we're talking about obsession and how sometimes the only thing more dangerous than being alone is finding exactly what you're looking for. This is the story of Yolanda Holloway and Caleb Jones. I should say up front that I cannot confirm this story is entirely true. I have not been able to verify the incident or find reliable references to it, but the account is so strange, so haunting, and so fascinating that I felt it was still worth telling. Perhaps someone listening remembers whispers of it from that time. Perhaps someone living in London can confirm part of it, correct it, or offer more information. Until then, consider this a story balanced somewhere between rumour, memory, and the static. Set in London in 1983, The Lover's Frequency follows Yolanda, an archivist drawn to forgotten lives, and Caleb, an engineer obsessed with rebuilding what death takes away. What begins as a strange and tender romance between Bloomsbury's records and Soho's hidden workshops becomes a macabre investigation into clockwork bodies, haunted transmissions, and a love so desperate it refuses to stay silent. Episode 1. The Clockwork Devotion. Imagine London, 1983. In Bloomsbury, the rain slid down the black railings of Georgian terraces and pooled outside the basement windows of the city archives, where Yolanda spent her days poring over yellowed coroner reports, hunting for forgotten history. Caleb, on the other hand, lived closer to Soho's electric underworld, an engineer of prosthetic limbs who worked among brass rods, solder smoke, and overloaded wiring. They met at a dimly lit Victorian curiosity shop tucked between a record shop and a shuttered theatre entrance, both reaching for the same antique taxidermy blue jay. According to the reconstructed case notes, this began in Bloomsbury, London, with two people, Yolanda Holloway and Caleb Jones. What connected them was not simply romance, but a shared fascination with death, preservation, and the strange idea that broken things could be remade. Their connection began quietly. After the blue jay, they kept finding excuses to meet weak tea in basement cafes, long walks through Bloomsbury squares, late evenings in second-hand bookshops where Yolanda searched for marginal notes and Caleb examined broken bindings as if they were injured limbs. Both were drawn to damaged things, not out of pity, but because they believed damage carried memory. On their second date, Yolanda admitted that her greatest comfort came from tracing the histories of forgotten lives. Caleb did not recoil. Instead, he rolled up his sleeve and revealed the brass and leather prosthetic forearm he had built after an accident. He told her he loved anything that could be remade. What might have frightened anyone else became, between them, a language. By day, Yolanda searched Bloomsbury's records for lives the world had forgotten. By night, Caleb worked beneath Soho, where wet pavements reflected neon and every quiet channel seemed to be waiting. For a while, the strangeness between them felt almost gentle. Yolanda brought him names from the archives. Caleb built tiny mechanical flowers from watch parts and left them on her windowsill. In the rain, they shared chips wrapped in paper outside a Soho theatre and spoke about death the way other couples spoke about holidays, cautiously at first, then with trust. 6 months later, their private world changed. Caleb was diagnosed with a rare, aggressive neurological disease. As his body began to fail, the inventor who had spent his life rebuilding what was broken found himself facing the one mechanism he could not repair. Night after night, he and Yolanda worked beneath a closed Soho music venue, in a basement where club bass trembled through the ceiling, pirate radio bled through the speakers, and every wire seemed to hum with a secret. Caleb refused to fade, and Yolanda refused to let grief have the final word. In his final days, Caleb designed a complex, clockwork-driven armature, a framework of brass rods, silk pulleys, and brass wire. In his final hours, Yolanda held him, and exactly as planned, she activated the mechanism. It was an act of profound, chilling devotion. For the next year, Yolanda lived inside the ritual of keeping him moving. Each morning she wound the brass springs. She cleaned the preserved remains of the man she loved, read to him, and danced with the stiff clicking joints of the vessel he had designed. To her, the whir of his brass heart was proof that death had been delayed. But the machine did not save Caleb, and it slowly unmade Yolanda. When police finally conducted a welfare check after the landlord reported weeks of silence, they found Yolanda curled in the corner of the workshop, unresponsive, clutching a music box. Caleb's brass body sat upright in a chair, polished, posed, and perfectly wound. They say love never dies, but sometimes when love is preserved at any cost, it becomes the thing that consumes everything left alive. Episode 2, The Static Cell. In our last episode, Yolanda was found beside Caleb's clockwork body, lost in a devotion that had become ritual. Tonight we move from love story to case file. The official report says the welfare check ended when the body was removed, but Detective Nicholas Bowen noticed something the report could not explain. The static began the moment the wires were cut. The Bloomsbury Hospital didn't know what to do with Yolanda. She sat in a sterile room painted institutional cream, staring at the blank wall beneath a buzzing fluorescent light, completely silent. The corridors smelled of disinfectant, damp wool coats and overheated radiators. But she wasn't empty. Doctors noted her eyes tracked movements across the room that no one else could see. Hospital notes later described Yolanda as non-verbal, but not unresponsive. Her eyes moved as if following something no one else could see, and staff recorded unexplained audio interference in the room long before anyone understood what it meant. Back at the sealed apartment, Nicholas logged the evidence item by item. 1 clockwork armature, 1 music box, 43 pages of handwritten notes, a cassette recorder with worn plastic buttons, and a police radio that would not stop crackling. The irregular sound drew him back to the central brass heart chamber. Inside it, behind a panel no officer had noticed, he found something that did not belong to any ordinary mechanism. A black box of meteoric iron wrapped in copper coils. Caleb had not built a puppet. He had built a transmitter. He believed human consciousness carried a measurable electromagnetic signature, and when his body failed, he did not intend to leave. He intended to broadcast. Nicholas sent the core for analysis. The lab returned no clear result. The metal predated its own paperwork. The coils carried a charge without a source, and every recording made near it contained the same faint 3-part pulse. Nicholas left the apartment that night, but the signal followed him through every machine he owned. The car radio, the refrigerator motor, the police scanner on his desk. Beneath each sound, the same pattern returned. Short, short, long, the cadence of a failing heart. Caleb's signal had survived him. Now it was searching for somewhere to arrive. 2 weeks later, Yolanda spoke for the first time in the hospital. She did not address the doctors. She turned toward the security camera in the corner of her room and whispered, "I hear you, turn the dial." That night, every electronic screen in the hospital glitched at once. Patient monitors flatlined in unison, though the patients kept breathing. The security feed showed Yolanda standing, arms extended, her joints making a precise mechanical click that no living body should have made. When guards rushed into the room, Yolanda was gone. The window was locked from the inside. The only thing left was the television monitor on the wall, buzzing with heavy static. They never found Yolanda's body, but shortwave enthusiasts still speak of the lover's frequency, a wandering signal buried between stations. Under the white noise, they claim to hear 2 voices, one mechanical, one almost laughing. Caleb and Yolanda are no longer trapped in brass. They are trapped in the airwaves, carrying their tragedy into the dark. Episode 3, The Living Antenna. In 1983, London was alive with signals. Police radios, pirate stations, payphones ringing in rain-dark streets, televisions humming behind curtains. For Detective Nicholas Bowen, one signal became impossible to ignore. First he noticed it, then he followed it, finally he answered it. Tonight we trace the 3 steps that turned an investigator into an antenna. Nicholas drove the same route every night, from the locked evidence rooms near Bloomsbury to the wet back streets of Soho, where Caleb's workshop sat silent beneath a shuttered music venue. The city answered in code, a neon sign flickered twice, a police radio stretched into one long tone, and the rhythm returned, short, short, long. At first Nicholas blamed stress. Then he began keeping notebooks, times, frequencies, weather conditions, street locations. The pattern always led back to one object, Caleb's meteoric iron core, the small wound-dark box removed from the brass heart chamber and sealed in evidence. By the 3rd week, he no longer wanted to solve the case. He wanted to complete it. At 3 a.m., under the colorless glow of a station corridor, Nicholas signed out the evidence, using a falsified transfer slip, carried the core through the rain, and locked himself in his basement with a police radio, a cassette recorder, copper wire, and a borrowed high-powered transmitter. In radio, a signal can travel for miles, but it still needs somewhere to land. Caleb and Yolanda had escaped the body, but escape had made them unstable. A love story reduced to electricity, grief and hunger. What they needed was a ground, something living, listening, and lonely enough to answer. When Detective Joshua Hastings knocked on Nicholas's door the next afternoon, the windows were vibrating in their frames. The house gave off a thin electrical whine, high and constant, the kind of sound that settles in the teeth. There was no answer. Hastings forced the door and followed the smell of scorched dust, hot metal, and ozone down to the basement. Joshua Hastings found Nicholas seated at the workbench, upright and motionless, facing a wall of television screens tuned to static. Copper wire ran from the transmitter to the black core, then from the core to the damp skin at the base of Nicholas's neck. His eyes were open, His mouth was open, and from somewhere deep inside his chest came three sounds, two soft clicks, then one long mechanical exhale. Nicholas was alive, but only technically. His nervous system had become a broadcast tower. When Hastings touched his shoulder, Nicholas's arm rose in a stiff, segmented motion, not like muscle, but like a mechanism being wound from inside. Then every television screen cleared at once. Through the basement speakers came a dual voice, Yolanda breathing through laughter, Caleb clicking beneath her words. The lovers had not returned from death. They had found a shape inside the living world. Nicholas, who thought he was investigating a haunting, became the mast that kept them on the air. This is the final transmission. For 3 weeks the basement on Elm Street has been quiet. The police cordon removed, and the local airwaves still. Today we say goodbye to Yolanda, Caleb, and the detective who became their bridge. Detective Nicholas remains in a long-term care facility, a medical anomaly. His vitals are stable, but his muscles have completely calcified, freezing him into the posture of a man forever reaching for a dial. The doctors call it an unprecedented neurological shutdown, but the shortwave listeners know it better. The night Nicholas was found, the lover's frequency vanished from the local bands. It did not die, it widened. A week later, an oceanographic research vessel in the North Atlantic picked up a strange dual-layered signal bouncing off the ionosphere. The following day, a weather station in the Arctic recorded the same mechanical rhythm through its deep space telemetry. Short, long, carried farther than any local haunting should reach. We like to imagine love as fragile, a spark that flares, fades, and leaves us mourning what ended too soon. But Yolanda and Caleb left behind something harder to name. Not a ghost, not a miracle, a signal. If you tune your radio to a dead channel tonight past the static and stray fragments of distant voices, you may hear nothing at first. Wait, if the room is dark enough, the silence may begin to breathe. Leave a comment with your thoughts or any information you may have and subscribe to the channel for more bizarre but true tales. Until next time, keep your lights low and don't answer the static. Thank you for spending this time with me on Bernette's Bizarre but True Tales. Your likes, comments and subscriptions help keep these strange stories alive. Next time we follow another unsettling account from the edge of rumour and record, a lonely house, a locked upstairs room, and the footsteps that were heard long after the last resident had gone. Until then, stay curious, stay cautious, and listen carefully to the quiet. We open the file on a house that should have been empty, a door that would not stay locked, and a voice from the upstairs room whispering a name no one in the family had ever spoken aloud. Earl Amber has